We're joined on this episode by a costume designer who has worked in film, television, and theater, whose multitude of credits include Lucky McKee's The Woman, The God Committee, which is now streaming on Netflix and high up in their ranks this week, and the Amazon original series Alpha House, among many others. He is Michael Bevins. Michael, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
I'm excited to be part of this with you guys.
Yeah, we have not to this date had a costume designer on our show, and we cover a variety of different disciplines within the film industry. But I think this one I'm particularly excited about because I think it's one that people don't really have a lot of insight into, other than when they maybe watch the Oscars and see all the period films get nominated.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely. I'm kind of specialized in the lower budget independent film world, and it's definitely has a lot of challenges that make it really exciting for a costume designer. And every project is unique. One of the things that you have to think about as a costume designer is you want to create clothing that's appropriate for the project. You don't want to make people leave if it's, a serious drama. You don't want to make people leave and say, oh, I really covet that dress or this or that, because you're basically doing a disservice to the project. So some of the most exciting ones are the films that you leave and, you don't even notice the clothes. But it kind of gives you a little insight into who the character is. So it's a wonderful part, an important part of filmmaking.
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited to dive into all this. But before we jump ahead of ourselves, I'd love to start off, in the way we usually do with our guests is, how did you get involved in film and filmmaking? Was there a movie, a TV show, or a relative or a friend or someone that got you interested in movies or theater?
Well, I started in the fashion industry, and I worked as a designer of fashion for a while. And through that, I got to kind of build a lot of clothing and things like that. But the thing about fashion is kind of an industry. And the thing about fashion is you always need to come up with something new for the next season. So you're always trying to predict what you think people might want to buy next season. So it's a constant cycle. And there's also kind of a psychological negative part about fashion in that you always want your clients, or in the past, you always wanted your clients to feel that they weren't quite fashionable enough to where they had to buy the next collection in order to be considered stylish or fashionable. And thank God that part of the industry is gone now, because it's much more about style than product. But that was a big part of the industry. And so I was in that for many years, and I was living in Paris, and I was working at Yves Saint Laurent, the fashion house. And it was a wonderful experience, but there was no more joy in it. And so I decided to take a costume design class, and all of a sudden it just hit me, because I wasn't trying to predict what women or clients might want to wear in the future. I was trying to inform something about the character through what they chose to wear. And that was an element that I found so much more rewarding and exciting, and also attainable. You want to say something, if a woman's supposed to come off as jealous, what color would you put her in so that the audience kind of reads that, and maybe you might want to not broadcast that she's that kind of character. So you put her in a different kind of color. So for example, I just mentioned that color. So Becky, what color would you want to think you'd want to put that character in if you wanted to show jealousy?
I think the one that comes to mind is obviously green with envy.
Yeah. Or red, or
yeah,
colors and stuff like that. Color kind of plays an important part. Now all of a sudden you see this character, and you're kind of led a little bit into who they might be. And and there's a lot. The wonderful thing about a lot of the horror genre is you kind of turn that on its ear. So if you have this woman that's a jealous kind of a person, you might put her in baby pink, and so the audience has no sense that that's the path that this particular character might have. So it's kind of really pretty exciting.
You mentioned you actually took a class for it. Did you immediately segue into applying for a gig? Did you first work at a job in the theater, or did you get a job on a show or movie?
Well, it was really interesting. I studied in Paris, and we had like kind of a graduation thing where we showed our clothing, and I got a job offer in Paris to do a play. So I did an old play by Jean Racine called Andromaque, which is an old Euripides play. And right off the bat, so I did that. And then I did another play, and I decided it was really kind of exciting. But I had the ability to create stuff. So I was kind of appealing to a lot of people because I was able to do period pieces, but, reasonably priced because I did it all. I cut the fabric, I sewed the fabric, I did the fittings and created it and everything else. So I think that's why I'm also pretty much a good fit on the independent film world, because I can kind of create a lot of things that, might normally cost a lot of money, but because of my experience, I'm able to do it at a more reasonable price.
Were you already a New Yorker at this point and you were kind of living between some spots, or did the play jobs get you to New York?
No, I moved to New York in 82 and I started in the fashion world there, and I did that for 25 years. And then I moved to Paris in 2000, from 2000 to 2004. And then I moved back to New York, and that's where I kind of decided to switch gear out of the fashion world and into the costume design world.
What was the first film or TV show that you worked on?
The first film that I worked on was as an assistant designer on a film called Tadpole, which was a new kind of a concept called indigent. And it was a really interesting format in that they were trying to make films for a certain rate. And if the film sold, then everyone would get a nice paycheck. And so that particular film sold. The first film I did sold very well at Sundance. So everybody involved got, a pretty nice paycheck. And unfortunately, that didn't really pan out in the future. That kind of whole formula of everybody making $100 a day didn't quite stay on. But the first one as a costume designer was a film called The Eyes of Van Gogh, about Vincent van Gogh. And it was an amazing experience because it took place over several years, but the director wanted to have Vincent van Gogh in a different outfit for each of the different scenes to show the passage of time. But he wanted everything covered in paint and everything distressed and everything kind of like that because Van Gogh was poor. So it looked, when I saw the final film, it looked as if he had a closet full of rags. It just made no sense. So it was an amazing learning experience, that you can repeat clothing. You don't have to make something new for every scene to delineate time.
Yeah, I think that's something, obviously you gain through experience, but it's kind of that kind of perspective that a costume designer can really help bring to a film to help it feel authentic and play well on the screen. I guess, since pivoting a bit from your background to talking more broadly about costume design and film, at a really high level, what would you say is the unique value that a costume designer brings to film that maybe other departments aren't thinking about?
I think the problem costume design has in that a lot of people's mind, they just think of it as clothing, but it's really more than just putting somebody in a pretty outfit. It's about something that I kind of talked a little bit about earlier was it's trying to say something about the character. There's nothing more rewarding than when you're in a fitting with the director and the actor and you're showing these various options and the director kind of hits on something after, a couple of fittings and gets a sense, oh, that really works. And the actor goes, oh, now I'm seeing who the character is. And it really kind of helps everybody informed. And it also, when you're doing your preliminary fittings, you also find out what doesn't work, which is also kind of exciting. It's not you're fitting your first outfit and it might be okay, and the second outfit might be a total dud. And rather than get depressed about it, you kind of say, oh, this is exciting because now we know what direction not to go in. And that's a really kind of an important part of what we do. Elimination is a big part of it.
I hadn't really thought about it from that perspective, but I can definitely see, I think a lot of art forms are that way, where sometimes you just got to play around with things to see what doesn't work before you land on what feels right.
Right, exactly.
So you mentioned, the actors and directors is kind of some of your key collaborators. Can you describe kind of how you work with them? Who's giving you the most direction? How much input do actors have typically? And also maybe production designers, how do you interact with them in terms of, the overall look and feel, or maybe even the cinematographer? 'Cause some of the roles people maybe don't think about as being relevant to costume design.
Yeah, I think that that's such a wonderful question because it's so true. You do have to interact with everybody. For the most part, you start pretty much with the director and you kind of get a good sense of what they want. And one word that you just mentioned, Becky, that I think is really important was the collaboration. You know, it's not about what I think they should wear. You know, I don't want to do a disservice to what they're trying to do. I'm there to help the director realize their vision and the actor to feel comfortable in the clothing. So I'll usually start in the fittings with discussing first with the director, and then we'll have a kind of a whole series of pre-production meetings and discussions about that before I even interact with the actor. A lot of times on the lower budgeted things is you don't have the actor until a day or two before you actually start filming them. So you kind of have a sense of where you need to be. Once the actor comes in, though, if you're fortunate enough to have your fitting with the director available, it really makes it wonderful. But directors are pulled in so many different directions that, it's rare that you're able to kind of have them for most fittings. So you really need to work with the actor and make sure the actor is comfortable. And if you want to do something, say a green color for them, and they absolutely hate green and they're superstitious about it or so on and so forth, but the director really wants green, then you kind of have a discussion between all parties. And, if the actor will fight for their cause and the director sees it that way, then, like I said, it's all very collaborative and pretty much you have to be flexible. And that's really exciting. Then once you pick your color stories and stuff, then you really work, you tell the production team, the production designers, these are the color palettes that I'm working with, and they will kind of tell you where they're working with. And that's pretty much it. The cinematographer, we don't really interact with them so much. You do a little bit, but they'll kind of work with, if they know what color you're intending to go with, and they'll kind of go with that, which is something that's really most costume designers don't think about. And that's what they call is color cover. And what that means is they'll be setting up with stand-ins, and they want to have the stand-ins in the color of what the actors are going to be wearing in the actual scene. So you don't have to have a beautiful, very expensive burgundy gown, but you need to have a burgundy sweater or something like that so the cinematographer knows how to light the set properly. So that's kind of a real interesting thing that you don't really know until you're after a couple of films that you kind of need to do that.
So having that early experience, it sounds like you've worked in a good number of genres and periods. Is there actually one genre or period you prefer to kind of play around in the most?
I like anything that lets me be creative with a little bit of fantasy. Period films are a lot of fun. They're difficult to do if you need multiples because, you have to. Contemporary projects are easier because you might shop and be able to get duplicates or triplicates of something. But, if you're doing a 1950s piece, you'll have to build maybe 3 of the 1950s suit or purchase them if you can or whatever. So that's, I like fantasy stuff. One of my favorite films that I really loved was called The Bread Factory. And it was a very creative film that were about these 2 women that owned an art studio house thing in upstate New York. And Patrick Wang was the director. And we had Tyne Daly and another actress playing the 2 leads. And I got to create all these kind of great costume things because they would put on theater performances and things like that. And the best part about working on this film was the end of the film was the women had to leave their art gallery, and they were leaving the project, the housing where they were, and they started walking up the hill. And then the director had the ghosts of everybody that had inhabited that theater kind of following them a couple of minutes later. So the end of the film was hundreds and hundreds of people coming from behind the camera, walking up this hill, following them. And I got to put everybody in like an amazing costume, which was just really exciting. So I had some Shakespearean costumes and some comedy costumes and some punk outfits and everything. And so it was 150 people in some kind of a really interesting thing other than regular street clothes. And it was just so rewarding.
That's awesome. I was about to, my follow-up was going to be, is there a show or movie where the costume design you were particularly proud of your work in? And it sounds like you got to go wild with that one, unless there's another that comes to mind.
Oh yeah, there's so many that each one has its own magic about it. The film The God Committee that's currently out with Kelsey Grammer and Julia Stiles was really exciting. One of the things that I want to kind of mention is that the director was a young director who's only done a couple of films. And when we were breaking down the script, I'd say, okay, which man's going to be the guy that's running the hospital? And he says, well, what makes you think it's a man? I said, okay, well, this really horrible lawyer that's taking care of this person, who's this going to be? And he goes, well, again, what makes you think it's a man? And it was kind of wonderful because he dragged me into the 21st century with, instead of that men doing everything kind of thing. So he got Janine Garofalo to play the head of the hospital, which was just amazing casting. And he had this woman that was the star of a Broadway show playing this sleazy lawyer. And it's so exciting now because things have really changed for the better. There's so much opportunity, which I think is really kind of exciting. So that's just kind of the most fun thing going on now in filmmaking.
Right. So maybe this is also fun in another way, but kind of almost inverse of this is, what are some of the most difficult challenges that you've encountered in your line of work? Oftentimes, budgets are a challenge for everyone. So I'm sure that's going to be, but budgets, time, communication with directors, from your perspective, kind of what presents the biggest challenges?
The biggest challenge is when you work with well-known people, I find it's a lot easier than the kind of mid-level actors. The mid-level actors kind of have higher expectations and bigger demands. And I did this one play with a very well-known Broadway actress. And I had a $7,000 costume budget for the whole play with 7 characters with 3 looks each. And this Broadway star wanted everything custom made or from Bergdorf Goodman, and that was really frustrating. So, the producers had to kind of cough up more money to get her what she wanted. And the play ended up for 10 performances and then it closed. So no fun. But those things are really challenging when you have a demanding personality. But for the most part, I think you kind of roll with the punches. I've been lucky in all the work that I've done that I go in knowing what the budget is from the beginning, and it's usually pretty inflexible. If I have, say, a $5,000 budget, I know what I'm able to do. So I try and do it there. That if, for example, things change, if the director decides they want to add scenes and add characters and things like that, then you usually talk with the producers and you see about, expanding the budget if need be. But for the most part, I've been pretty lucky. Most things have kind of worked out really well. And one of the things that I'm real excited about is I find every film has what we call little miracles. And it just makes what I do a joy. And that's kind of really fun.
So since you brought up, major celebrities almost being easier to work with, I'm kind of curious, and you don't have to name names or anything, are there certain actors that kind of come with their own wardrobe, so to speak? Because I've noticed that someone like Jason Statham, for example, he always wears turtlenecks in movies. And I always wonder, is that something that he, talks about with the costume designer that's like, hey, this is my style, I want it to be consistent? Or even I think of someone like The Rock, who probably has to have everything custom, given his shape and size. Yeah. I've always been kind of curious how that works with some of the really big actors.
If it's a drama and you're not doing any blood work or anything like that, sometimes you'll ask an actor to bring their own clothing. But I try not to do that. I think you get a better performance from an actor if you are contributing to their performance by providing clothing for them. Of course, if it's really, really micro budget, you can what they call closet dive, where you would go to somebody's home and you'd see what they have that might be appropriate, and then they'll wear it in the thing. But I find that that's really difficult to do. I did this one really sweet musical film called, I'm drawing a blank on the name of it, but it was about these teenagers kind of competing in a music festival, and the winner got to have a prize or something like that. And the director said, I have a $500 costume budget, but don't worry, all the actors will bring their own clothes and we'll be able to do it. And I kind of reluctantly agreed to it. And the actors all came, and they came with a suitcase of clothing. But, we were filming for 5 weeks, and these were clothes that they needed to wear for these 5 weeks as well. So we worked it out to where, I contributed money in order to do proper costumes and for a producer credit. So we kind of worked that out. And I don't think I'm ever going to do that again because I never got it.
Yeah, don't advertise that.
Yeah, I don't think but that it's interesting. It's hard to really get things. But, you mentioned Jason Statham with the turtlenecks and stuff like that. That's the difference between like celebrity, like movie star and actors. I'm not saying this is his case because I don't know him, but I know sometimes if somebody has a specific look that they want to stick to and adhere to, then it's because they're kind of known for something and they want to stay in that zone. But then you have other actors that kind of want to change. You look at Meryl Streep, who's kind of like the top of people that have done so many different variety of clothes. Every project is completely different. She wants to look different in everything. So if somebody kind of wants to look the same in each film, they're kind of movie stars, I think, and they want to, it's their brand and they kind of want to stick with that. That's kind of the way I feel about that.
Yeah, I think Jason Statham is definitely one of those examples of he plays Jason Statham in every movie he's in, right? So, yeah, I think that's a good point.
I'm always surprised when I work with an actor and they don't mind looking ugly. It's always like, whoa, really? Coming from the fashion world, my first instinct is to make something pretty. And so I worked with Amy Sedaris on a television series, and she always wanted to look interesting and peculiar, more so than pretty. And it was kind of something I had to learn to do. It's kind of fun.
She is always looking not herself, from Strangers with Candy into The Mandalorian. Even she's always got like an odd look. And I've heard stories too, like Johnny Depp always wanted to ugly himself up, and like in Sleepy Hollow, the studio said, "No, we're selling your face." He's like, "No, I want a big crazy nose."
Right.
So, seems like you're right about that. Mid-tier actor might be more vain than the ones that are made. Like George Clooney doesn't mind playing a doofus in a Coen Brothers movie or having messed up teeth in a period piece because he's George Clooney. I think you're right that there's that tier of actor that might be a lot more consumed with that.
Well, the thing that's kind of interesting, and since both of you are, know actors well, and I think women are put through more hell than men as actors in as far as judgment and critique and stuff, and so most actors will do 100 auditions for every one job that they get. And everything is about the way they look and the critique. And, the producers used to say in front of them, is she blankable? Is she somebody you'd want to have sex with? Or, is her nose too big? Or is her that, in front of the person? So I find if they're kind of mid-level actors, sometimes that are struggling, they get a little neurotic, and it's kind of understandable because of the wheels of the way of the whole casting process, and that's what's kind of, you kind of have to think of that a little bit when you're working with them and doing fittings and stuff. A little bit of hand holding is kind of necessary because they kind of put through the ringer.
Absolutely. I think one of the things people don't appreciate about actors is that it requires an extreme level of vulnerability, and not everybody is in a good enough place with themselves and has enough confidence to do that sort of work and be able to sustain kind of the judgment that they get every single day, or people being very cruel just because they look a certain way. And yes, you're right. Women have been subjected to that, a lot more than men historically.
Yeah.
So,
and so they'll come to a fitting and I did this really sweet project several years ago called Made for Each Other. And we had a lovely young actress that was so self-conscious about her forehead because somebody had said, she's got a forehead that looks like the Grand Canyon. And so she was so sensitive about it that she'd have to kind of comb her hair forward and have bangs and this and that. And it's really kind of, it doesn't know that constant criticism kind of doesn't number on. So you have to have a little bit of kind of empathy.
Yeah, absolutely. More empathy all around for everyone. This is the way to go.
Exactly. The world I'm in too, because, in these lower budget projects that I love to do, there's not a lot of money to go around. So people aren't doing it for money. They're doing it for the love and the passion of what they do. And, you work on these great little small films and everybody's so passionate about it, otherwise they wouldn't be doing it,
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Speaking kind of the indie filmmakers out there, this show is really geared towards them and giving people, advice who are making their own movies and often on a small budget, although pretty much everyone has small budgets now. What can filmmakers do on set to save time or money or pain in post when it comes to wardrobe and costuming?
Ooh, I'm not really sure because there's always things that come up at the last minute that are a bit of a surprise. So I worked on this wonderful film called Darlin with Pollyanna McIntosh. And a lot of the scenes were filmed in a hospital. And we had this scene where this kind of feral young woman went into the hospital and she was real dirty and filthy and stuff. And we had kind of lined up the scenes of how we were going to shoot it. And the actress kind of jumped into the arms of the doctor, and I only had one pair of scrubs. And so his top was kind of covered in black schmutz. And then we had to film scenes like from before when they filmed. And so we just kind of had to stick with it, which was kind of disappointing because it kind of threw you off a little bit when you were watching it. But that's kind of the one thing you have to look out for. Continuity is a big part of working on lower budget projects. You really, really have to communicate a lot with the script supervisor. And as a costume designer, the script supervisor is your best friend. You're constantly comparing notes. We're taking photographs and they're taking continuity photographs. And you work very closely together when the cameras are rolling so that you don't have these issues like something like a collar being up in one scene and down in the next and then up in the next scene and so on and so forth. So a lot of it is kind of that kind of wonderful diligence.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see when it comes to like continuity errors related to costuming? Is it just when you only have one piece of wardrobe and then shooting, out of order and it getting messed up, getting blood on it or something like that? I know blood is always difficult to work with. It's kind of a nightmare on set. What are some of the most common things you see?
Well, I think the blood is the most challenging and kind of the continuity, especially filming out of sequence. About 60-70% of the time when you're doing stunt things where maybe there's blood involved, it always seems to work out best for the camera department and the location if you start from the end and you go backwards, which is always really frustrating for costumes. When you can film in sequence, it just makes it a lot better. But, a lot of times you'll start at the end with the aftermath of what, something might be. And the person's dead laying there in a pool of blood and then you go backwards. And it's always, you need to have 4 items of that. So you have to kind of think about that as far as how you're going to plan it. But one of the most interesting things that every costume designer, their first mistake that they all make, and you learn it so quickly, is putting embellishment on the bottom of items. So say you have a period film and you have a woman in this beautiful skirt, you have all this embroidery along the hem, and then the top's kind of simple and plain. Well, 95% of the film is from the waist up. So don't waste your time on doing things kind of on the bottom unless there's kind of a specific shot where you're going to see the full body. So you learn from your first time that, put your emphasis on highlighting from the waist up, making that more important, making your statements there rather than on things that'll never be seen on film. And that's something that most directors, cinematographers, and everybody else kind of learn in their first couple of projects. And the costume designer always makes that mistake at the beginning of their career, and you kind of learn to navigate that.
Yeah, that's a good note. You hardly ever see like the close-ups on the legs or the boots or something like that.
Right. So many times, I'm sure when you folks are both on sets, you'll see the actors saying, what are we going to see in this scene? Then they'll want to wear their Uggs or their very comfortable shoes for the scene if they're only kind of sitting at a table or shooting from the waist up. And it just kind of, it's actor comfort, and it really works well.
The newsman's telling you about the kitty in the tree with his pants off.
Or the other thing is, when they're the newsman and they're sitting down, they have to sit up and kind of tuck their jacket underneath them when they sit so that the shoulder, which is really kind of wonderful, all these little tricks and stuff.
So speaking of those kind of tricks, is there any larger advice, maybe some macro stuff you might offer to filmmakers who may be interested in either pursuing costume design or just want to learn more about that section of production?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is what does the best service to the film? A lot of people that start in costume design is they want to be showy. They want to kind of make their mark. And it's kind of best for you to approach what people wear in your film and your project by what you're trying to say. If you want this to be kind of pop fun, like a film like Scream or something like that, where it's just kind of cartoonish, you want the clothing to kind of pop and be colorful and kind of reflect that. But if you want to do kind of a serious drama where the clothing is not important, you kind of approach the look of the clothing from that standpoint. So you think about what you're trying to say in the film. If you're not, if you're a director and you want to talk to the person that's pulling your wardrobe together, you kind of want to give them a sense of what you kind of want the feeling and tone of the film to be. So for example, you may say to your costume designer, I really like the look of Hal Ashby films from the 1970s. And what that means to the costume designer is it's kind of neutral colors like Harold and Maude or Cinderella Liberty, or those kind of films. He had a very kind of specific color palette that he worked with. Or you'll say, I want it to be kind of candy colored pop thing, something like 13 Going on 30, which was this kind of fun comedy where everything was bright, clean, candy colored and fun. A lot of times with dramas that are kind of heavy and thing, a costume designer will never even bring out an iron or an ironing board. You kind of want the clothes to look lived in. And when you're working in projects like that, where the clothes just need to have this organic part of the film thing, a lot of times you want to kind of put the actor in the clothes early so that you start to get the creases in the elbows and the knees and the this and the that, just to give it that real lived in kind of a look. One of the things that's frustrating for a lot of directors is when a costume designer goes shopping, they'll go to Old Navy and they'll get triplicates of something, and then they'll film it in the scene and it looks brand new. It just doesn't have that kind of a lived-in quality. That's a great thing for some films, but for most of them, you want things to kind of have a lived-in look.
To that point, do you have a go-to great example when you tell people oh, that movie was such a wonderful example of costume design? Are there a few that come to mind for you?
Oh God, there's so many that are each one, and it's one of my most favorite costume design films was Lemony Snicket's with Jim Carrey. Colleen Atwood was the costume designer on that film, and everything in that film was created, from the textiles to the embroideries, there was nothing off the rack in that film. It was just so inspiring. So as a costume designer, it was just exhilarating. And you look at her work and you just kind of go, wow, if only I had the budget for that.
She was an icon long before that movie, but it was good to know she still had it late in life there.
Yeah, that was amazing. The whole thing. So many, I don't know, there's so many things that I find really inspiring. Like The Nightmare Before Christmas, I thought the little clothing choices that they did for those beautiful stop motion puppets was just perfect. Everything about that. And that's also a big part of the costume design thing now, are these stop motion films. There's a big part of a lot of jobs now for costume designers working on these kind of unusual things, not actors so much, but puppets or stop motion thing. And it's kind of exciting. Have
you had the chance to do one yourself or no?
I have not. I did work on one secret project that hasn't come out yet. The gentleman that did The Shape of Water, where they had the fish person there in the water, he's developing kind of a creature shop. So he made this science fiction film that I got to work on, where we kind of built all that rubber, fantastic costume stuff. So that was really kind of exciting. One of the things that I found interesting about that is these rubber clothing, they have to look kind of seamless and stuff. And I discovered working with magnets was kind of interesting. You can cut a rubber piece right down the middle, and if you put magnets on either side and kind of dig the magnets in a bit, it'll close and you won't even see the seam. I think that's how they do that with a lot of these fantasy films and stuff. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I believe it. If they don't have to have a zip up in the back or shots on the back, why not?
Right, exactly.
I think that's a lot of valuable information. We'll move on from the official interview portion of this. We appreciate all of that.
All right, let's pivot over to the segment called Rapid Fire 15, which we always joke isn't very rapid, so no pressure to actually answer quickly. It's really more of like a inside the actor's studio kind of pro style questionnaire just to get to know you a little better. No pressure on the answers. It's pure fun.
It's whatever comes to mind first. There's no points. It's not you're not being graded.
Yeah, sometimes people get weirdly nervous about this section, but it's all meant to be fun. So I will kick it off with the first question. What movie do you think you have seen the most in your life?
Nightmare Before Christmas.
About what would you say is your favorite movie franchise?
My goodness. I don't know if I have one, a franchise.
Well, Becky's it's a transporter as much as she's mentioned Jason Statham.
No. I'd pick Fast and the Furious, which also includes Jason Statham over that.
Well, I think the James Bond films are always really kind of exciting.
Yeah. And a lot of good costuming in those too.
The tailoring that they do is just beautiful. And can you imagine how many multiples that they must have? It's
especially for Craig. He's gotten mighty dirty in several of his outings.
Yeah. I did a film with Famke Jensen once, and I was talking to her about what it was like to do the X-Men. And I said, I was picking her brain to find out how the whole thing worked. And she told me that for Jane Grey, for her character, the burgundy leather trench coat that she wore, they had 7 versions of that. And 4 of them were for stunt people, and 3 of them were for her. And I thought that was really what a wonderful budget you must have to do that. She has some men as the stunt people. So, you have a 6'2" guy, you have to kind of make the proportions look interesting. I thought, God, the amount of work and the money that goes into something like that. How exciting is that?
Right. And then you multiply that by the huge cast and think they all probably have, multiples of their wardrobe. Insane.
You have to think about all that wire work and all the other things. And I have a friend that worked a little bit on Black Panther on the first one, and she said it was amazing. They filmed in Atlanta, seeing all these costumes and, how things would kind of change and this and that, and how complicated the whole thing was. But God, those costumes were fantastic. I'm so glad Ruth Carter got an Academy Award for them. I just thought she so deserved it.
Yeah, they were excellent. So what is your favorite sitcom of all time?
Ooh, goodness, the favorite sitcom. I think I really enjoyed Seinfeld. I thought that was kind of a lot of fun. Friends, I thought that was kind of fun for a while. I don't know if I'd like them as much now, but back in the day, I thought it was kind of pretty fun.
Not all of the episodes have aged well.
Right. Yeah, you kind of think, oh my God, they're so self-absorbed. I think Frasier, I'm going to take it back. I'm going to say Frasier was probably the most clever and the one I enjoyed the most.
It was into the must-see TV on NBC Thursdays.
Right.
So as someone who has worked in the theater, do you have a favorite play and or playwright? I know a few have been dropped and mentioned earlier.
I did a couple of plays with Neil LaBute. And he was always very interesting because you never really knew what things meant until, actually working with them for a while. He did one play called From A to B and Back Again. And the play was character A spoke this whole dialogue and character B spoke their dialogue. And halfway through, the 2 actors switched. And the actor that played B is now saying the exact words that A said at the beginning and then B. And I love those kind of things that challenge you. So I've done maybe 4 short plays with him, and I thought that was great. I don't know. I like a lot of the musicals. I think they're really great. I think Hamilton was pretty exciting. I'm so happy that the costume designer for Hamilton is doing so well now. He just did Spielberg's West Side Story. And I thought the work on that was pretty phenomenal. Paul Tazwell is his name.
Yeah, it's fantastic in that movie, among many other, technical sided stuff in that film.
Oh, pretty remarkable, yeah.
So in a similar vein, what is your all-time favorite musical, stage or film?
If not Hamilton, since he did segue himself into it on his own.
Oh, it's not Hamilton at all. I think one of the first musicals that I saw that I really loved was Little Shop of Horrors, and it was on this theater on Second Avenue in New York City. And Ellen Greene just did such a marvelous job. It was wonderful. And then when the film came out, I was blown away. The first 10 minutes of Little Shop of Horrors was pure joy and magic. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a song called Down on Skid Row, which opens the film. And I think Frank Oz was the director. Just brilliant, beautifully, beautifully done, and very exciting.
I believe you're right. I think it was Frank Oz. I know Roger Corman had done the one a long, long time ago. What would be your walk-up music? Say you were coming out to give us a presentation or a TED Talk, or even like in the vein of entrance music for a fighter or a ball player. What are you coming out to get the crowd pumped up?
Blondie, anything by Blondie. That's my jam.
Yeah, nice. Atomic would be a good one.
Atomic would be fantastic. Yeah, but even some of their lesser-known ones I think would be great. Like Dance Away, I think would be really wonderful.
Nice. Whenever Blondie's on, you can't help but, start the bop with your head. That's contagious.
Exactly.
While we're on the music track, what is your go-to karaoke song? Even if you don't normally partake in karaoke, if you had to, what would you sing on stage and perform?
Well, I'm not a singer at all, but this last project that I just did, we had, with your buddy Cameron, we had a karaoke night. And previously I was working on the soundstage, and I started singing "Oh My Darling Clementine," and so I was singing it, and one of the production designers was getting really upset with me. She said, "You're giving me an earworm. I hate it. Stop it." So we did karaoke night, and I got up and sang "Oh My Darling Clementine" because it's in the style of Deputy Dog and I'm sorry, Huckleberry Hound, and it was hysterical. That's about the only song I would try and attempt to sing.
That is an amazing answer.
How did Cameron factor into this? I thought you were going to say you were duetting with him at some point when he brought his name into it.
Did a duet. It just was impressive. He sings beautifully. Did a really good job. And he's not shy on stage, which is great.
Okay, no, he has see this. I need to see Cameron
underperforming shame gland. He has no shame.
No, wonderful. He's such a wonderful, calm, soothing presence on projects. And, I worked with him in January, and, he just gets things done in a calm, rational way. And then he goes up there and sings this song. It's like, whoa, Cameron, I love it.
As someone whose husband is a professional singer who has sung opera at the Met, who would you say is your favorite singer, vocalist of all time, but you cannot say him?
Oh, my God, I'm so conflicted about this because I absolutely love his music, and I saw him on Broadway 2 years ago, and it's Morrissey from the Smiths.
Oh, we understand the confliction.
He's 60 now, so he's definitely considered the senior, and I loved the Smiths in the 80s, and I loved his solo work and everything, and I went to see him on Broadway, and I just think he's amazing. I love his music and stuff, but from what I understand politically and whatever, getting a little unpleasant these days.
There's a lot of folks this week, this month, this last few years that are having a hard time reconciling, art that has saved people's lives versus the artists that have just completely lost all goodwill.
Right. Yeah.
He is certainly one of them.
The Smiths were such a wonderful group for me, in my generation.
Yeah, he has like this insanely huge Latino community that loves him. Like there's so many like weird facets to him that, again, people in the vein of him and J.K. Rowling and Joss Whedon, who were in the news a lot recently about like there are really affected people in positive ways for a long time. And now you see what schmucks they can be. It's a strange thing. Becky and I have actually talked about on the podcast a time or two, like how, art and artists has become such a hard thing to differentiate, and no shame to anybody who can't separate them. That's fine. It's just everybody's kind of going to make their own choices on that nowadays.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, it's a hard line to draw. There's on the one hand, a lot of men who are very talented have been enabled to get away with a lot of terrible behavior over the years. But at the same time, we also need to exercise empathy as humans and understand that people make mistakes and are capable of change. But everyone kind of has to draw their own lines around when, a mistake is too much to where you don't feel comfortable working with them in the future or don't feel comfortable consuming their art. versus saying, I'll let this person have another chance. But I think that line is for everyone to kind of draw for themselves.
Yeah, I think what's exciting now is there's so much wonderful dialogue. It's such a brand new, wonderful world. And I've worked with a lot of female directors recently. That's been very exciting because they're given the opportunity now. I did a film that I absolutely loved called The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah.
Seen it with Sam Elliott.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful film. But the whole production team was female. The first AD, second AD, everything. And it was just magical and so great that that's happening. And the last project I just worked with was my first time working with a non-binary character and learning that whole new dialogue and what, are the right pronouns to use and stuff is really kind of interesting. And it's a wonderful new world now. And that's what's kind of so great. There seems to be opportunity for people now, or people that at one time were more marginalized. Because when I started in 2000 working in films, it was boys' club. It really was. And, everything was off-color jokes and you kind of feel a little uncomfortable, but you kind of laugh with it and go, and, people saying things or inappropriate kind of glances and comments and things. And it's just not going to fly nowadays, which is wonderful. I think it's such an amazing time for young creative people like you guys. There's so much opportunity now. Doors have opened.
Yep. And everyone is learning every day, right? So that's as long as we're learning and moving forward and being empathetic in the process. So switching back to our questionnaire, we're going to change gears away from music. What was your favorite thing about living in Paris? Or maybe what do you miss the most?
I think the thing that was exciting about living in Paris was the weekly markets. They would have the farmers markets that would come into the center of each town. So Paris had two, one on Thursday and one on Saturday. And all the farmers would come bring their produce, but they would only bring what was in season. So you couldn't buy a tomato in January like you can in the supermarkets here. So it was always pretty exciting. That's the thing I miss the most. You'd go and find these just fresh cut artichokes and make these amazing meals and things from it. So that's my biggest thing. The thing that I don't miss about Paris is the kind of, it's not snobbery so much as the kind of seriousness that people have. The attitude a lot of Parisians have is they have enough friends. The friends that they have are the people that they went to school with, and they don't need more friends. So when you approach them in a friendly manner with a smile on your face or, this or that, they look at you and their attitude is, why are you an idiot? Why are you smiling at me? My friend, just tell me what you want. And that I don't miss. Leave Paris and anywhere else in France, it's totally different. But in Paris, it's definitely that thing. So that's the one thing I don't miss.
A few more related on this topic of like where you've been and lived. As a longtime New Yorker, where would you take folks or send an out-of-towner for a New York slice? If not pizza, maybe what eatery would you take a visitor to or recommend them to?
Oh, my God. I think John's Pizzeria is probably the one of the best in that there's one in the Village and then there's one on the Upper West Side where you would go and you sit down and it's only a full pie and you order it and you wait, and it's actually pretty delicious. So that's where I would probably go. But the other thing that's exciting about New York is the variety of different restaurants. So it depends on what you're in the mood for. The wonderful Thai restaurants or French or Italian or this or that. So there's such a amazing amount of choices. And now that I'm living in Nashville, the choices just aren't there. That's a little frustrating.
Speaking of Nashville, it also has, some cuisine that it's known for, not quite the variety of New York by a long shot. But what is your favorite local spot to eat at?
There is, they do something called hot chicken here, which is pretty much chicken cutlets with kind of a very spicy sauce. And there's a wonderful place, I'm drawing a blank on it, that makes great hot chicken. But the thing that I love most here is the farmers market. And they have a farmers market that's year round and it's daily. And the farmers bring their stuff and, You can get all kinds of great produce. A lot of it is grown in greenhouses, so you can, or hydroponically, so you can get lettuce year round. I like to go every Saturday and get 2 heads of this hydroponically grown lettuce and things. So that's my favorite food thing to do in Tennessee, in Nashville.
And a two-parter related to these. What's the thing you might say you miss most about the Northeast? And maybe what's the thing you like most about Nashville comparatively?
I loved that in New York, you had the 4 seasons. And so Christmas felt like Christmas. So we would get snowfall and, winter was winter, spring and fall were kind of shortened a bit, but I loved the 4 seasons. And so Nashville, it was 70 degrees on Christmas, but then 2 days after Christmas, it got to the 30s and we got a wonderful snowstorm. So I felt like it was the holidays. So I had snow covering everywhere. We had 8 inches of snow, and I felt like the holidays were here with us. And the next day was in the 50s and it all melted away. So I didn't have to shovel any of it, which I thought was pretty great. The thing I like about Nashville is pretty much everything's available here. In a lot of towns, you have maybe, for somebody like myself, you might have a fabric store called Joann's, and that's pretty much your only option. But in Nashville, you have maybe 7 different fabric shops that all specialize in different things. So things are easily attainable. Shopping is pretty good here. I think the people are pretty friendly, and definitely it's a great place for music. I've been here for a year, so I kind of stuck in COVID hell that we're not really able to go out as much as we would like. But the little bit we have, there's a lot of great entertainment here.
I can relate. I moved from Seattle to Denver in the middle of the pandemic, so it took a long time before it felt like I actually started living in Denver because, if you're not going out and enjoying all the city has to offer and you're just staying in your house or apartment, it kind of feels like you didn't really move. So I can definitely relate to that.
How were you hit with the snow then in Denver? You guys had a lot of snow.
Well, last year we did. The weird thing is this year, there has not been as much snow. We got one big dump on New Year's Eve, the last day of the year, but we hadn't had any snowfall before that, which is highly unusual. Normally it starts in October, and it was dry October, November, all the way through December up until the last day. And then we got a good chunk of snowfall. Seattle, actually, I think got more snow than Denver did, which is unusual.
Yeah.
But
John probably hasn't seen snow in a while, right?
I see it on the tippy tops of the mountains here a couple times a year. We don't get it on the sea level, but
that's enough for you.
It's a 30-minute drive to some snow if we wanted to see some snow.
Oh, good.
Yeah, California does have it all. But so, back to kind of the travel topic, when international travel is something that we can all do more easily again, hopefully very soon. What's a bucket list location that you'd love to visit, or maybe somewhere you're dying to return to?
I've never been to Hawaii, and I keep hearing such amazing things about it. So I think that would be my one bucket list. I'd love to go to Hawaii. If I had unlimited time and resources, I'd love to go back to Thailand. I loved Thailand when I went. I thought Bangkok was remarkable. Dirty, polluted and everything, but magic at the same time. And the food was incredible.
Hey, Wormy, I live there too.
You live
dirty? No, I'm saying dirty, polluted, but something magic about it. That's LA as well. That was not a sentence. I mumbled something. I was like, yeah, me too, my place.
It's like, did you have another life that I don't know about, Sean?
I had another brain there for a minute where I couldn't complete a sentence.
The thing in Bangkok is that they have all those little motorcycles to take you around, and they're all done with diesel. So the air has that heavy kind of smoke and kind of dirt to it. So that's where the dirt comes from. It's not that it's a dirty city, but the emissions from those little tap motorcycles just kind of permeates the air.
And it's so humid, right?
Just enough to make a hard man humble.
Right? Exactly.
Murray Head reference. Everybody had that on their bingo box. What is a tradition that is unique to you or to you and your husband or your family, be it like an annual trip or a certain holiday thing that you might do that's not something everyone else does?
We used to enjoy amusement parks, and we hadn't gone in many years. And so for his birthday this year, we went to Dollywood. And I think that's something that might be something we might like to do kind of on a regular basis. It was really charming. It was small enough that it was navigatable. Is that the right word? Unlike a Disneyland, which is immense. It was a little more reasonably priced and stuff like that. So I think that would be kind of like a new tradition.
That's awesome. I've never been to Nashville, and I really want to go. And that sounds like a fun.
It was up in
trip.
Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, though, isn't it? Way up.
Yeah, that's kind of far. Well, actually,
I didn't realize. How far is that from Nashville?
About 3.5 hours.
Oh wow! I didn't realize it was so far.
Yeah.
All right. So the last question in the rapid fire 15. What would be your dream project to work on? Like maybe a specific genre, a period, or a style of movie you'd like to tackle, or maybe a particular collaborator that you'd love to work with?
I think I'd like to do something kind of in the science fiction world. I think that it's so creative, and I'd love to do kind of a fantasy type of a thing like that just really got to put something original and exciting out there. I think that's the one project I really would like to do. But I've been lucky. The God Committee that just came out, it's interesting because I've done over almost 60 films in the past 15, 20 years. The God Committee was supposed to open at the Tribeca Film Festival last year, but it got kind of nixed because of COVID. So they allowed it to come back this year. And so we had a screening of that. And there's always, I would watch movies and I'd always say, oh, I wish I did that movie, or why couldn't I do a movie like that? Or I would like to do this one. And when the God Committee ended, I kind of teared up because I felt like, okay, I finally did the kind of movie that I really wanted to do that made a mark. And that was really kind of very exciting. So I feel that I've touched on so many of the things that I don't say I never worked again a day in my life. I feel that I've accomplished some things. And that's kind of a wonderful feeling. So I don't feel the pressure that I have to do a certain genre or anything like that. It'd be fun to do, but I don't feel as ambitiously aggressive as I did 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
That makes sense. You kind of find that happy place where you're like, hey, I'm doing the things I love. I'm getting opportunities to challenge and push myself, but but not too much pushing yourself. So it's a nice place to be.
I'm really lucky. I've got to work with some really incredible people like Lucky McKee. I mean, what a creative soul. I worked with him on a project in January, and his imagination and his joy and the ability to discuss that joy out into the whole crew. I mean, he brought everybody along with him on his ride. And that's just wonderful. And I've been lucky to work with such great directors like that. Patrick Wang is a director I've done 3 films with, and everything he's done has just been these passion projects that maybe might not get out there and be seen, but each one is a joy. It's I feel really blessed. I definitely feel blessed.
And Paper Street's had the good fortune to work with you a couple of times now, and not in a directorial capacity, but some stuff we produced, a couple of which we can't even mention yet. But yeah, Lucky's old man, that must have been a treat because you got to work with him many years back on The Woman.
Yeah, we did The Woman. I don't know if any people in your that are listening to this have seen The Woman, but one of the biggest challenges we had was it's about a feral woman who gets captured and kind of tied up in a chamber where this man's going to kind of discipline her and put her on the right path to find Jesus. And it was very interesting because I had to come up with an outfit. So the actress was shackled and she had to be changed from the rags that she was wearing into clothing. And Lucky wanted to do something like those sister wife dresses that those Mormon women would wear, that they all look the same with the puff sleeves and that kind of sack dress kind of a look. And that was a really important part to him. But the problem that we had was, how do you untie a dangerous kind of feral person and to put them into the clothing? You can't do that. So you have to do something that snaps on over what she's wearing so you can dress her without untying her. So we came up with this concept where we did snaps everywhere, and I had to make 4 of this particular outfit, and I think it really worked well. It just made sense, but it also had to look like the woman of the house made it on her home sewing machine. So there were kind of a lot of challenges that came up with creating this costume. And working with Lucky, we kind of had a lot of fun finding that. And that's always a blessing. When you get to work with a director with vision, that helps you a lot. I did a really sweet film called Future 38. And the premise of it was that a film was found that was made in 1938, and it was found in 2018 that predicted what the year 2018 was going to look like. So we had to work on things that the director wanted women to be wearing hats in 2018, and we did everything kind of in this Technicolor kind of a look and stuff like that. And I kept doing pretty things and everything was nice, but the director kept pushing me more. I needed to, he opened up my mind to be more creative, and what an amazing opportunity to be able to do things like that. I really do feel lucky. I feel I've got to work with some incredible people, and working in the independent film world has allowed me to do so many different types of genres, which is great. Unlike, say, a big 6-month major Hollywood blockbuster film where everything has to go through approval by so many people. I'm lucky that I deal with just a handful of people and can work in a collaborative manner with them to find just the right look for particular characters.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned being able to work on more as a result of working on these smaller scale films. And speaking of that, are there any projects you want to tell people about to, keep an eye out for, anything that you could, publicly talk about, or if there's something you kind of want to vaguely reference that people should be...
The God Committee is currently out, and then I have another film that opens in February with Adrian Brody called Clean. And we filmed that in upstate New York in the winter of 2018. And it was the bleakest film set I've ever worked on as far as snow. I mean, it snowed every day. It was freezing. It was cold. And the film's very bleak, but I think it's going to be really powerful. It's about a man who is trying to seek redemption for some horrible things that he did in his past, by kind of protecting this young girl that lives across the street from these street gangs. And I think that's going to be kind of exciting. And then I'm looking forward to Lucky's new Old Man. I think that would be pretty great.
For sure. Is there somewhere you'd like to direct people online to find you? I know you're not huge on social media necessarily, but is there a website or something you'd like people to look you up if they were to do so?
Yeah, my website is michaelbevins.com, and then there's ways to contact me there online. And there's all the information on, but it's Michael Bevins, Bevins, and you can see things there. There's also IMDb kind of gives you a list of the types of films that I've worked on. And a lot of them are still available out on Netflix or Amazon Prime.
Awesome.
Well, again, Michael, we thank you so much for the time and all the answers in both the rapid fire and the interview. And we're looking forward to more from you. I'm sure we'll be working with you again in the near future.
Well, it's a pleasure working with you. And I think what one thing I want to say is that I think Paper Street is exciting in that you guys are really forging your own path. And in a world where opportunity is somewhat limited a lot of times, budget-wise and things like that, you folks are all creating your own opportunity. And how magical is that? You can't ask for better. So congratulations to all of you.
We appreciate the kind words. Yeah, we'll take it. We'll own it. Aaron and Cameron work very diligently to maintain what we're doing. Ashley as well. Alex, myself, Farrell. There's a whole group of us here that are kind of in different facets of it. But yeah, we're certainly trying to do that because we've seen, we've all stumbled in our own ways. And I think as a team, we're trying to forge the path, like you said.
Yeah, a little gossip about Aaron that as a costume designer, I want to say. Aaron has the best personal style of any producer I've ever worked with. I love the way he coordinates outfits in such a great way that it's about his own personal look. And I think that that's what is so exciting about clothing and stuff. He's the perfect example of somebody that has their own style. They're not following trends. They're not doing anything. They know what they like and they look good in it and they put thought into it. And I'm always love when I see him, every day it's like something different in a great way.
He'll be glad to hear that. That'll feed his ego for a little bit.
He knows. I've told him.
Now the rest of the Paper Street crew has to step it up.
Oh, no. So however fashionable Aaron is, Cameron is inverse of that. And I think Cameron and Aaron would be the first to tell you that as well.
The thing I love about Cameron is that for Cameron, fashion, clothing choices are about comfort and practicality. And that's what's kind of good with Cameron. I think he feels that he's not, a fashionable guy, which is fine. Who needs to always, be following trends and stuff? But he dresses for comfort and practicality, and in such a great.
He is a pragmatic man, if nothing else.
Yeah, what is he? 6'5", right? He's a big guy, tall guy.
Not that big. 6'4".
6'4".
No, Alex is 6'5". We kind of cascade downward to Aaron. 6'5", 6'4", 6'3", and Aaron.
You're all ridiculously tall.
Don't know Ashley and Farrell's height off the top of my head, or I'd tell you. But yeah, we make all of our pictures from now on. We're going to pose as a little like
those stacking dolls, those Russian
triangle.
A Matryoshka doll.
Anyway, yes, Michael, once more, thanks again. And we look forward to more. And we will direct people to all those links you gave us at paperstreetpodcast.com. So you can find all of that there, along with some other Paper Street links. So we will let you go. Thank you so much. And we'll see you again down the road here soon.
Oh, wonderful. Have a great night.
Yes, thank you, Michael.
Thanks for having me.